So, have you heard about the new James Bond film? Of course you have, that's why you're here. By the way, before we get into this, no spoilers. I have to tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It was absolutely astonishing. Almost 3 hours long, flew by like it was nothing. But this is the first movie that I saw as a music major, especially a Bond film. The other movies I saw, like A Quiet Place, don't have a lot of music in it. They're very quiet, hence being Quiet Place. The other one was a horror movie, and it was full of horror sounds. But this was the first one that I saw with the soundtrack, with a very, very noticeable soundtrack. And though I noticed the soundtrack a lot more being a music major, haha, who would have guessed, there's something about this score that is much different than the other Bond films that I've actually listened to and actually looked at before preparing for this video. This was done by Hans Zimmer, and if you guys don't know me, I'm very adamant about Hans Zimmer, and I like Hans Zimmer a lot. I very much so look up to him as a musician because he's quite brilliant. But without talking about Hans Zimmer too much and his brilliance too much, I have to say the score for this movie was astonishing. It stood out to me very much so. And I didn't know why, but when I got towards the end of the film, again, no spoilers, I noticed similarities between two of the three final songs in this score and that of another score. That score being The Dark Knight Rises, which if you don't know is the final movie in the trilogy of The Dark Knight trilogy. Ironically, No Time to Die is actually the final Bond film for Daniel Craig. And if you didn't know that, that's not a spoiler, that's literally just pretty known fact about the movie. But I'm getting off track. I really want to talk to you about the line of films that come before No Time to Die, specifically the ones under Daniel Craig, whether it be Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, or Spectre. They had different composers. Now, there have been three different composers while Daniel Craig has been the James Bond, that being David Arnold, who had done films with Pierce Brosnan, Thomas Newman, and Hans Zimmer being the latest installment as a composer for the Bond series. Now, why am I bringing this up? Why is this important? Well, the sheet music for the newest Bond film hasn't come out yet. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I've searched for hours trying to find any sheet music telling me any key signatures so that I could really talk about the songs that I want to talk about. And I haven't been able to find it, so I decided to dig deeper into James Bond, even going back to as far back as Tomorrow Never Dies, which was in B flat. I went back and I decided to take a look into these songs, and especially the ones that include Daniel Craig. Casino Royale's main theme is in the key of E. Quantum of Solace, in other words, Another Way to Die, is in E minor. Skyfall, the song itself, is in C minor, and The Grand Bazaar, which is the intro to the movie, is in C minor. And Spectre, Writings on the Wall, the instrumental version that is featured throughout the song, is in F minor. Now, as I discovered all these key signatures, I really wanted to get to the bottom of why I was hearing such a similar sound. So I went back to No Time to Die, the theme song that was done by Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas. The key signature to that song is E minor. So it can't be that song, right? Because the songs that I'm referring to is I'll Be Right Back and Final Ascent. Now, in comparison, the songs that I'm referring to from the Dark Knight trilogy, A Dark Knight, Rise, The End, and Why Do We Fall, are all in D minor. Now, I wanted to find out about these two songs that we're talking about, Final Ascent and I'll Be Right Back, where they came from. Why do they sound so similar? Well, there's no sheet music out anywhere that I can find right now. I searched for hours trying to find it, and if you could find it, please let me know so I can actually figure out what it is. But these two songs feel so similar. But it's not because of No Time to Die, which No Time to Die is actually featured throughout the song periodically. It's not quite the same version that we hear from Billy. It might be just a half step lower, which a half step lower would be D minor. Here's a track from The Dark Knight Rises. It's featured throughout the trilogy, but I'm going to use this track in particular. And here's the track I'll Be Right Back from the recent Bond film. You notice the similarity, because I'll Be Right Back sounds like it was taken straight out of the Dark Knight trilogy. So my immediate reaction was, where's Batman? Is he fucking here? Because musically, I was hearing Batman. Now, that might be just me losing my shit and identifying music wrong, but I also want to show you this final song, which is Final Ascent. And now I'm going to play you the final song featured in The Dark Knight Rises. These might not be exactly par for par similar, but there's a focus on a cello, which I think is oddly peculiar. It's not like the cello is a rare instrument to use. I mean, Hans Zimmer used it very, very prevalently in Jack Sparrow, the theme suite for Jack Sparrow, which sounds like a drunken sailor. The use of it in this very downtrodden tone and this very sad and very, very emotional scene is rather noticeable. Because, again, I was drawing back to the end of The Dark Knight Rises. Again, I'm not going to mention how that movie ends, and I'm not going to mention how this movie ends, but I was getting a lot of similarities. In other words, I was getting similarities to a film that I knew really well, and I was contrasting it to a film that I was seeing for the first time. And immediately I was getting feelings from what I got from that film, and it was really quite emotional. And with it being so emotional, I draw back to that track that I just mentioned, Final Ascent, which is absolutely magnificent. It's one of the best pieces I think I've ever heard. But why am I talking about this piece, and why am I mentioning it so much? It's very ironic that I'm hearing similarities between The Dark Knight Rises and No Time to Die. But again, as I said earlier, Hans Zimmer did the music for both of these. Both of these are the culmination, the end of the series, the end of the actor playing the role. There's always going to be another Batman, and there'll always be another James Bond. It's just how it works. They're characters that live on. Just like George Clooney playing Batman back in the day and Sean Connery playing James Bond back in the day, there will always be a new actor to fill the shoes. When it comes to the track No Time to Die, and that being the Billie Eilish version, I think it has an extremely poignant feeling to it. I think it adds a lot more to the story. And why is that? Well, that's because the song itself came out a year before. The song's been out for an extra year because I was at a different college when the song came out. The movie was supposed to come out last year. So the song has had a lot of time to just kind of live. And it adds a lot more emotionality to the song when you hear it in this final ascent. When you hear it played softly in the piano, it's very charismatic, it's very heroic, and it's very stoic. And maybe that's the intention. Maybe that's why there's parts that are so similar to The Dark Knight. Maybe that's why I'll Be Right Back is so similar to countless of songs from the Dark Knight trilogy. It's because James Bond's a hero. And maybe that's what the intention Hans Zimmer was trying to get across here. Maybe. Maybe, just maybe. But Final Ascent, though being a focal point of this video, and might honestly be the reason why I had to make this video, because I just adore the track so much, I think its similarities to The Dark Knight Rises finale is alarming in a good way, because it's showing a connection that maybe you never heard. Now, I'm not saying Hans Zimmer reused any of the tracks here. I'm not saying he reused anything from any of the scores, but I just wanted to draw the comparison because I think it's rather interesting that the end of a series and the end of another series are so closely drawn together with music. It's quite literally and quite brilliantly how music is so intertwined within our lives, and maybe you never noticed it, or maybe you noticed it but didn't really remember where it came from, and you're like, oh, that's where it came from after watching this video. I don't really know. But what I do know is that these tracks are very similar, and my final statement is, I want to say that I believe that these tracks, Final Ascent and I'll Be Right Back, are in D minor. I'm not sure if I'll be right, but when the sheet music comes out, I'm sure sometime after the movie is released today, that maybe the sheet music will be out and available for me to check and see if I'm right. If you think it's different key and maybe think it's an E minor, let me know. Because, again, like I said, No Time to Die, Billie Eilish's track, is in E minor, but Final Ascent especially, I believe, is in D minor. And the fact that I'll Be Right Back is very similar to those tracks that I mentioned from the Dark Knight trilogy, whether it be Rise or A Dark Knight, which are in D minor, leads me to further believe that these tracks are in D minor, which is the saddest key. And that being the saddest key is leading us to the end of a beloved character. And it's truly a magnificent end. And I do hope you go out and watch it in films, and that hopefully no one spoiled it for you, including myself. Everyone knows this is Daniel Craig's last movie, and he did a brilliant job with it. And the music for the series was brilliantly tied up by Hans Zimmer. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's rather short, but I really wanted to talk about this. Next episode, I'm going to be talking about how Hans Zimmer makes music make you cry, because this song, Final Ascent, honestly made me like tear up in the movie theater. It was really emotional for me, so I want to talk about how Hans Zimmer makes you cry, and I'll be doing that in the next episode, so please stay tuned for that. If you like what I do and like Hans Zimmer or like me, stay tuned, because I do tons of stuff. I do regular music, I do scores, I do music. I love music, that's my thing. I'm a music major. Even though I'm songwriting and music production at the college, even though I'm songwriting and music production at the Berklee College of Music, it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in stuff such as movie scores. I've always loved movie scores, and I've grown up listening to movie scores more than most pop music. So, I'm here to talk about both pop music and scores. And if you like both, then stay for both. If you like one, stay for it. If you like the other, stay for it. You know what I mean? Anyways, guys, thank you all for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to talk about the film down below, talk about it down below, but just try to avoid spoilers, especially for those that haven't seen it. If you want to talk about if you want to talk about Daniel Craig's performance, please do. It was absolutely magnificent. I think it gave a lot of callbacks to the originals, and I think it was rather a great way to tie off the character and a great way to say goodbye to the Bond that I grew up with. And maybe that was why I was so emotional with it, including the soundtrack that accompanied it. But for me, this is the first Bond that I'm really saying goodbye to. I grew up with Daniel Craig as James Bond, and I think I will always remember him as my James Bond, even though Sean Connery is great and Roger Moore is, he's Roger Moore. But this was a great end to a great character, and I really enjoyed Daniel Craig's performance through it all. I think he was rather brilliant, and I will miss him as Bond moves on to the next Bond. Anyways, guys, have a great morning, evening, afternoon. It's 5 o'clock, so you know it is. I love you all. Spread the love, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out, everyone.